The club was originally formed as a meeting point for people of like-minded interests, male, female, it doesn't matter. We then sort of obviously developed, and as everybody who has something of interest, they want to show it to everybody else. So we had our first antique car show in 1988. Since then, we have had a car show every year. So we are very pleased. They get bigger and bigger. This past show, in fact, last March, we had 67 cars and trucks and 2 bikes, which was quite impressive, biggest we've ever had. We currently have, 50 members? Between those members there are between 100 and 150 cars and trucks. So it's, as I say, it is getting bigger and bigger. The car show has evolved now into a major fundraiser. So every year we select a children's charity here in Nassau, or in the Bahamas. It doesn't have to be Nassau, we're going to the Family Islands as well. The last one we gave funds to one of the children's homes, Milne Lane Children's Home, and we have also made funds available to a very, very good school in Abaco, the Every Child Counts school. Other than that, we also do every Christmas. We have, I don't know, what have we done? We have taken two schools under our wing, so to speak, and they're both in relatively poor areas of Nassau. And so we ask the teachers there to find in each school 40 children, the neediest children, from 5 through 17. And we prepare a food hamper and a toy for all 80 kids. And that has been a fantastic success. We make the donation the last day of the Christmas term. Yeah, Christmas term. And that's, as I say, has been very, very successful.
Well, the reason why I got this particular car is because everybody has a 64. I've noticed that there are quite a few 66s or 67s or 68s, and then there were not that many 65s. So I went ahead and did a little bit of research just to find out that 65 is a one-off body style. And so I decided, this might be an interesting project. It'd be sufficiently challenging. It was sufficiently challenging. It took us a little bit longer than we'd anticipated, 5 years from start to finish. But it's been very rewarding. We really, really love the car. It drives well. It's a beauty just to look at and to go for a cruise in. 65 is a one-off body style, which made the whole process very, very interesting. A whole lot of the parts that we wound up having to come up with, we really couldn't find. We had to modify or, just make something work. We couldn't find a new dash for it, so we had to resort to the digital dash, Dakota dash out in Sioux Falls, I believe it is, Sioux Falls, Dakota. They put it together for us. That in itself took 6 months. So with finding parts, refurbishing parts, and doing all kinds of other things, it took us about 5 years from start to finish. We found the car actually in South Florida, but it belonged to a good friend of mine by the name of Kenny Brown. He actually got the car out of South Carolina. In fact, I still have the original license plate for the car back in 1965 when it was originally licensed by the very first owner. So that's going to be a part of the historic memorabilia that we keep with the vehicle. So it's an original South Carolina car, but it was brought to Florida. The interesting thing is, at the point in time that we got the car, it was winning shows for most original car, original engine, original interior, original everything original. At that point in time, the market was kind of shifting to the resto mod, the best of the old and the best of the new. And so that is what really tickled my fancy. Picked up the car in May of 2002. Took us 5 years to put it all together. We got it done on Christmas Eve 2007. The guy that was working with me on the finished bodywork had promised me that I'd have it for Thanksgiving that year. We didn't get it done for Thanksgiving. Then he promised me faithfully that it would be my Christmas present. Of course, I bugged him beyond measure, but we were able to pull it off and got all sorted out, and it was the greatest Christmas present I'd had in a long time for Christmas of 2007. And then in 2008, we entered the Antique Auto Show, and we actually won that year. No, it's not an everyday driver car. As you can see, it's a convertible. It does beautiful sunny weather. It does not like the rain. It's done a few celebrity weddings, few NBA players, that type of thing. It's also become very popular locally for proms and weddings, and for music videos. It recently did a music video for a French music producer. Forget his name right now, but yep, that's my baby.
Okay, I bought this vehicle about 10 years ago from a friend who does restoration. He had it about 2/3 finished. So I had to do the front end, steering, center link, tie rod ends, low arm, the whole works. Spring, had to replace the front coils because it was originally a 6-cylinder engine. He put that 302 in there, so I had to replace the springs for weight. The C4 automatic transmission, power steering, power brake, air condition, which is working. Well, I use the car for weekends, holiday weekends, some Sundays. I take it for a run simply because I has 4 other antiques, so it'll be a while before I get back to this car. I am a mechanic, and I've always been interested in Fords, working for the Ford company for a number of years. So my thing was to get myself a Mustang. I've got a 1950 Chevy, 2-door. I've got a 75 Corvette coupe. I've got a 1953 Mercury and a 560 SL 87 Mercedes Coupe Sport.
Well, I've been interested in old cars for a long time, and when I was a young boy in South America, my father had a number of company trucks that were this vintage. So I was born in 1952. I wanted something that had aged with me, hopefully better than me. So I went out and looked for this Chevy. I'm a Chevy fan, so I went out and I looked for this 1952 Chevy pickup because it was born in the same year that I was, and I found one. I went on eBay, and I actually found it in California. Interestingly, I bought a car previously through eBay. I was able to find somebody I knew close by who could check it out. In this particular instance, I didn't know anybody near where the car was, so I got to know the owner of the car, talked to them a little bit, got to understand the condition of it just from talking to them. His wife actually was still driving it. It was on a ranch. And I got to know him. I had some confidence that it was in good shape. It didn't have any rust, he said. So I bought it on eBay, and I arranged to have it shipped over to Florida. I hired this company that transports vehicles across the United States. They charge you a fee. They actually go to where it is. They pick it up. They drop it off where you want it. So I arranged that. I arranged to be in Florida at the time that it arrived, and they stopped at US 1 in a place called New Smyrna Beach, pulled over to the side of the road, and I drove it off the truck. I had pre-arranged insurance, so I had it insured. It had plates from California saying 52 Blues, thus the name of the truck, 52 Blues, and I drove it off. And then a friend of mine and I over there for about a year and a half worked on it and rebuilt the parts of it that needed doing and repainted it. Well, the truck, as I said, was belonged to a family in California. They were using it for ranching. It had been in the family since day one, so it had never been out of the family. It was, I'm not sure if it was grandfather or father's, but they had it in their possession. They said it had not been in any accident. It hadn't been painted, but they said there was absolutely no rust on it. When I got it, there was no rust. I mean, the paint was worn completely off it. There was no paint left on it. It was down in parts that looked to the primer, but there was no rust. Even in the normal spots, which is in the corner of the cab where sometimes they rust, there was nothing. So I got the thing. I was very pleased. One of the things that he had intended a couple years prior to me buying it was to rebuild it. So he had roof liners and door liners and all of that. He threw all of that in. He had a spare engine from years before that he threw in the back. So I got all of that one shot. It ran perfectly well, everything was fine. But what I wanted to do was to take it down, prime it, sandblast it, prime it, and rebuild it. And we did that. We didn't have to change anything with the engine. A couple brake caliper seals and stuff like that, brake cylinder seals, stuff like that, but nothing major. And once I had it fixed, I used it over there for a while and then brought it to the Bahamas. I bought the truck in early 2004. And as I said, brought it over and worked on it. Didn't bring it back into the Bahamas till late 2005. What I use it for here, I use it on weekends to go to work or to go, get a coffee and a beer somewhere, or a hamburger and a beer. We use it sometimes when we go out. I try and drive it as often as I can, at least once a week. I try and not to drive it when there's a lot of traffic, and I try to pick my routes so I don't put it in harm's way, although that's not always possible here. The roads aren't that good, so it's a bit challenging at times. And I put it in the shows, and I do some of the fun runs, as they call them. I did not buy the vehicle for the shows, and so I've missed a couple shows. I bought it for my personal enjoyment, and really that's what I use it for. I have another real special car, a real special one. I have a 1973 Volvo P1800 ES. Which is the sport wagon version, which is just a lovely car. Very different, and nobody in this country even knows what it is. I keep telling them that it's kind of similar to the one the Saint had, except it's in the sport wagon. But most people don't remember the Saint, so that's a bad sign of my age. But anyway, it's my other car. I love it. It's in good shape again. I bought that in California. I had a friend of mine in the States work on it as well. Didn't do as thorough a job on it as I did here. I'm actually in the throes of doing a couple of things in the tune-up side of it, and I found somebody in North Carolina who has all the parts. So it's a matter of figuring out what you need, ordering them, and UPSing them down or FedExing them down.
This is a 1978 Corvette. It's the 25th anniversary special by Corvette. I've owned this car for at least 5 years. I found it in Florida. I was contacted by a dealer and I agreed to buy the car. The car came as a package, this Corvette and a 1982 Mustang. I bought them both without seeing them. When the Corvette arrived, I realized I needed to do some interior work and a paint job, and I've done that. The interior is not yet done, not yet complete, The car is a project still, and one day it might be finished. It's in reasonably good condition. It's my hobby to collect cars. It was another old car that needed some TLC, and I was available to do the project. This car came from a trust fund, I'm told, and it had been auctioned at the time to the dealer who introduced me to it. I decided it was a good chance to own a Corvette. This is really my first Corvette. I've been collecting cars for some 20 years. I have quite a few of them, and generally I use them for show purposes. I have other cars that I drive ordinarily. My antique cars are primarily for the purpose of my involvement in the Antique Auto Club of the Bahamas. I have an OT plate that allows me to run any one of my cars on any day within reasonable hours. I have no restrictions on my plate, but the police tend to think that you should be off the road by sunset. And so you might see me driving around in an old car on any given day, but certainly, generally, not after sunset.
This is a 1956 Chevy pickup. I've owned it now for 19 years. I bought it in West Palm Beach at an auto show. It was in very good condition. I did some work to the engine. All the interior was already completed. All the back was completed. And I've only had to change the rims. Other than that, it was in excellent condition. Same paint job for 19 years. I bought it from a guy in West Palm, who, as a matter of fact, I met doing some shows, and he got it out of California and had it totally restored, body off restoration. It was bought on a farm in California and shipped from California to West Palm Beach. I use it for the auto shows, the local shows, and I normally use it about once a month at the most. The painting on the hood is always a big attraction. That was done by the previous owner, and for many years people have always asked who did it. It was done by a guy called Steve Cruz, who now lives in Atlanta, Georgia. But he's one of the finest airbrush artists they had around in West Palm Beach at the time. Besides the 56, I have a 1955 Chevy Bel Air. I also have a 1961 Chevy Corvette and a 1970 Camaro SS. Well, the 55, I'm in the process of refurbishing it right now, and the other one is also under construction.
I'm one of the founding members of the Antique Auto Club of the Bahamas. It started as a result of the Kiwanis Club of Cable Beach having a antique car show as a fundraiser, and I was contacted by them. Somehow they found out I had an antique car. And then three of us, Don Arana, Charles Johnson, and myself after that, started talking about forming a club. And we had our first meeting in July 1987 with 6 members. and we've grown from there, and we have just over 50 now. On the 1940 Ford Coupe, for several years I had wanted a 1940 Ford for three reasons. My name is Ford. I was born in 1940. But the 1940 Ford, I really liked the grille structure on it. I really liked that grille. It was the only year that Ford had that design with the three pieces and the louvers down the sides. And I also liked the taillights, which were the Sergeant stripes. And that's what really made me like that car. As far as how I found it, I wasn't looking that hard for one. I had a 1956 Ford Fairlane and a 58 Ford Thunderbird, and I made connections several years ago with a place called Bob's T-Birds in Fort Lauderdale. We have a very good relationship, Bob and I. And I called him one day because I needed some new shocks for my Fairlane. And I called Bob and I told him when I was coming over, and he said, "Oh, there's a big auction on that weekend. Barrett Jackson's having an auction in West Palm Beach." I said, "Yes, I know, that's the main reason I'm coming." So he said, "Anything in particular you're looking for?" I said, "Well, 1944, just to see if maybe they have any." He said, "A friend of mine just bought one. He found it in a barn. Why don't you give him a call?" So I didn't call him, but I went to the auction. We just had fun. I didn't really try to bid on anything. And then I went to Bob the next day to pick up my shocks. He said, "Did you call that guy about the 40 Ford?" I said, "No." He picked up his phone, he dialed the number, he said, "Go in my office, sit down and talk to him." So I talked to him for a couple of minutes, and he was describing the car, and I said, "I think I need to see this. How far away are you from here?" He said, "About 3 hours." He said, "Bob knows the way." I said, "All right, I'm coming." And he was up in Melbourne, Florida. And he had found the car in a barn somewhere around Tampa. And it had been sitting since 1975. This was 5 years ago now. So it had been sitting since 1975. So I went and had a look at it. It was black, it was dirty, it was dusty, but the body was really solid. The interior looked good. He had some of the panels off so I could see from inside the doors that the car was good. So we chatted for a while, and he told me what he wanted for it, and I made him an offer, and he said okay. So I left him $1,000 deposit and went home. And then I guess about a month later we went back and we picked it up and brought it back here. I didn't get any of the work done over there in Florida. I had it done when I got back here. Found a fellow that was pretty good, and he changed the color to red, as you see. And there was a little more work needed to it than we originally thought, but you've seen how it turned out, and like I say, it's one of my favorite cars. The 56 Ford Fairlane is really my favorite, but the 40 comes into close second. One interesting part of the story that I left out at the first part, when I finished the purchase up in Melbourne, we hired a truck driver to take it down to West Palm Beach to bring it over here. The car only had 3 hubcaps when I bought it. The truck driver, as it turned out, had once owned a 1940 Ford. The only thing he had left of it was 1 hubcap, and he gave it to me. I thought that was a nice, kind of a small world story.
This is a 1946 Parker Clipper Deluxe. I've owned it for the past year and a half. I've purchased this from a former member of the Antique Auto Club of the Bahamas. I purchased the car simply because I always wanted an old antique vehicle. Luckily, I had the money at the time to purchase it. I became a member of the Antique Club from 1998. That's over 10 years now. I use the car in special events. I put it entering in the Antique Auto Car Show. I don't take it out on the road too much. Every time I take it out, someone asks me to do either a wedding, a funeral, or a prom. I've always been interested in cars. From a young boy, I used to run around with a stick in my hand, playing like I'm driving a vehicle. I just love old vehicles.
I owned a 1965 Corvette. It was originally a pace car that ended up in Freeport, Grand Bahama, which was destroyed during Hurricane Jane, and then it was shipped here to Nassau. And I purchased it as it landed. Told the guy there was no discussion, just bring it over. And we restored it, did a chassis off restoration, replaced all the damaged parts. Has the original engine, 327. It's been chromed up, but it's all original. Gearbox has been changed. And we put rims, all the suspension and everything is being upgraded. And so we have a fairly nice vehicle there. It had quite a bit of work to be done, and it was all done right here in Nassau. We had to replace the hood and the trunk. We had to replace the windshield and some of the windshield support panels, but they were all done right here. We use it basically for show, and we also have what we call, occasionally we have a fun run. We all get together, have a social and a drive around and have some fun.
Okay. Hi, I'm Peter Armstrong. I'm president of the Antique Auto Club of the Bahamas, and I'm here with my 87 Avanti, which we have customized a little bit, but it's basically as came from the factory. I bought it new in 1987, 1st of August. I picked it up at the factory gates. I drove it down from South Bend, Indiana. We went via Chicago, the Lake of the Ozarks in Missouri, down to, where did we go to? New Orleans, and then across country into Florida and down to Miami, and then shipped it from Miami to Nassau, and it's been here since late September 1987. It's needed a bit of work actually. In effect a disaster from day one. It leaked like a sieve. On the way down we took it to, we had a huge thunderstorm going into New Orleans, and I think we had more water in the car than was outside. So called the factory up. They arranged for me to take it into a major repair shop in Miami, who handled that for me. When I got it back to Nassau, there were some bits and pieces which still were not terribly satisfactory. So at that point, the factory then sent a rep here to Nassau, and we sorted out the major problem, which was the sunroof. Should never have bought it with a sunroof. Plastic body and metal frames don't really go together well. It gets used about once a month. I try and do it a little bit more, but that rarely happens. It does get a good clean out though every 3 months when we have a fun run. The club organises a fun run. We meet up at a club member's house and take off for about a 2-hour drive around the island, and then head back to the same house where we will eat and drink for a short while and then take the cars home before it gets too dark for us to see where we're going.
In 1977, I found this car in a warehouse in Miami, Florida. Gentleman, of course, being a used car salesman, said it was a one-owner car. I doubt it, but it only had 22,000 miles on it. So it was in good shape. I always loved the Thunderbird. I've owned Thunderbirds before, and this was the last of the breed, so I decided to buy it. I've owned the car since over 35, almost 35 years. I've had this car. And it has been a marvelous car. I drive it not daily. I used to drive it daily, take the kids to school, so it has a lot of history as far as the school kids, and a lot of embarrassing moments with my daughter because she didn't like to drive a car with the top down. And other than that, my wife drove the car for many years, even though we had a second car, until more recently we just drive it occasionally. I don't use it for a show piece, because if I own something, I want to use it. And the car has been very great to us. It's very exciting to have it. Especially it's only one of a kind here in the Bahamas, and everyone loves the car, so it gives you a great feeling of owning something that everyone else likes. I've changed the paint. The original color was silver mink, similar to the interior, and I haven't had any other work done. I haven't touched the engine since I bought it, and no mechanical work has done to the car, really. The mileage is now 57,300 miles, yes. The plan is to have it reconditioned, have some new interior done, and whatever's necessary to bring it up to a high standard. I'm only driving it occasionally on the weekends, and the odd car shows, being a part of the Antique Club of Nassau, I put it in a show. It's not show quality, but it's a classic.
This here is a 1939 Chevy Master Deluxe. It was originally bought in Tampa, Florida. It was found at a restaurant on the beach in Tampa, Florida. And we bought it here to Nassau. I bought it off my cousin, mainly because I really didn't want to see it go to waste. And I really love the car. I love the big body style and the big fenders. At that time, we needed quite a bit of work to be done to it. We upgraded the suspension. We did independent rear suspension, and we did the Corvette steering rack and leaf spring suspension in front. The upholstery is all done with genuine Venezuelan leather. The engine, it's a 5.7 2-in-port fuel injection. Well, we had all the chromes redone. We had to replace the running boards and all of the glass. We use it mainly for showing purposes, charities, weddings, and we also occasionally use it on what we would call our fun run. The Bahamas Antique Auto Club, we get together about quarterly and we have a fun run and a social. The original grill we had to replace because it was fairly damaged. This grill here had special audit. It was made from one big sheet of stainless steel, and the guy cut it out with a laser and formed it into what you see here right now.
I had the car about 10 years. I bought the car in Fort Lauderdale at Ross Auto Parts. The car cost me about $2,000. I had it in storage, public storage, for 1 year. I rent a U-Haul trailer and we purchased the car, take the car out of storage, and took the car in Orlando, Florida. He overlooked the car and he gave me a price to do the car. I gave him a deposit down and I told him to take his time, don't rush it, and do the car. He went back home to Nassau. Every month he called me and one of my other friends. We went down and we looked, checked the car out, gave him another deposit, and it went on like that until the car was completed. It was bodywork, painted, had the doors off, the fenders off, the hood off, and had the chassis, had up the chassis, done everything properly, conditioned everything, and put it back together. After the car was completed, painted, get all the accessory parts, all the glasses, new glasses, all the chrome and the accessories, and we had it put together. Afterward, I took it further up in Orlando, and I contacted another young man in order to do the upholstery. I met this young man, and he gave me a good price and a good deal on the upholstery, and he did the upholstery for me. I went ahead and I bought a 383 stroker engine with a 350 BM transmission from Wheeler Motorsports. I had all those installed in the car in Florida. After that was installed into the car, I brought the car home to Nassau. And one of my good friends by the name of Michael Sweeting, he had put everything together for me. All the accessories. He had restored the engine, put on the headers. I have a carburetor, Holley carburetor, 700 Holley carburetor, headers, cam, racing cam, aluminum radiator, chrome booster, and everything was super. He get it ready for me and complete it. I ran out and get some rims, nice rims and tires, and got it together. Everybody should enter into the car show. I said, man, I just get this car to drive street and strip when I feel like just driving. Weekends or go to church, just drive the car. They said, Mama, this car looks nice, enter into the car show. They encouraged me to rent into the car show. I went into the car show. Little did I know, God had it for me to rent another car. I was lucky. I got a 2005 Nihon. Rims, white, everything was beautiful, and I got some trophy, and it motivated me to go a little further. I went and I met Mr. Ferguson, Roland Ferguson, would introduce me to Mr. Peter Armstrong, to Mr. Ford, Mr. Folks, and everybody. I meet the whole club. I was interested. I entered into the club, made a member of that club. And here I am now, still a member. This was my dream, to own a nice classic car. And I love the 1955 Chevy Bel Air. I always remember one of my friends that owned a 1955 Chevy Bel Air. His name was Leonard Gibson. He had a 55 Chevy called the Man. Every time you see him, that's the Man. And everybody admired it. And I come back as a return of the Man. And here it is, dear. Beautiful. White, red and white, torch red, with a nice white. I got some accessories rims. I got aluminum radiators. I got nice tires and a little accessory, more modified like. But you can see the beauty of the 55 Chevy in it.